All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. I want to thank everyone who's joined us today, and I want to thank David Jones and Donna Stanton, our sign language interpreters. I'm joined by Commissioner Alma Anaya, who's Vice Chair of our Cook County Board Commission, Complete Count Commission, Marilyn Sanders, who's Regional Director of the U.S. Department of Commerce, Census Bureau, Christina Vera from the William Everett Group, and our Chief Data Officer, Desa Jablow. Xochitl Flores, our Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Economic Development, is with us to help answer questions. Together, we're going to provide updates and answer questions about the 2020 census efforts. Every decade, we count the population in this country. We've been doing it since 1790. And our government uses this count to determine two critical things: state representation in Congress and the allocation of financial resources. Formulas for how to distribute billions of dollars are determined based on the census count. Currently, Cook County is at about 60%, which means if Congress were to sit down and assess our piece of the financial pie, we would miss out on 40% of the investments needed to provide for our Cook County residents. When people don't complete the census, they're removing a vital piece of information necessary to complete this formula. In terms of the county census data, I want to provide an update on our efforts to reach 100% completion and discuss some of the work that we're doing to promote participation in the achievement of this goal. Let me be clear. The COVID-19 pandemic has made our efforts to achieve a high response rate much harder. And I'm sure our participants here will touch on this as well. And in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, Cook County has had to adjust our 2020 census operations in order to protect the health and safety of the public and our census workers and implement the guidance from federal, state, and local authorities regarding COVID-19. We want to be sure that everyone completes their census form and that we get an accurate count in all of our communities. The strategy for responding to low census tracts, to areas where the responses are low, remains comprehensive and guided by data, in coordination with elected officials and community organizations, some of whom you'll hear from today. While our digital efforts are enhanced, we recognize the importance of maintaining community-level visibility, and we're doing this with lawn signs, distributing informational inserts in newspapers and community food pantries, and sharing flyers at PPE distribution sites. One of the critical measures of good government in any administration is transparency. And in that spirit, we're using technology to improve awareness. And we launched an online dashboard called Census by the Numbers. And this dashboard on our open data website provides a general overview of how 2020 census grantees are investing their grant dollars to generate awareness about the census and encourage completion. Our Chief Data Officer, Desa Jablow, will share more details later. And I want to thank leadership and staff at the Bureau of Technology, Tom Lynch and his crew, and of course the staff at the Bureau of Economic Development, Xochitl Flores and her team, the representatives from the William Everett Group, and our grantees for their continued efforts to make sure that Cook County residents get counted. Over the summer months, we look forward to continuing our efforts to achieve 100% participation. And we want to encourage everyone to complete their census by going online, on the phone, or through mail-back responses. Thank you all, and now I'd like to bring up Commissioner Alma Anaya, who serves as Vice Chair of Cook County's Complete Count Census Commission. Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to everyone who's attending. I know that you're going to be receiving some great presentations and information that's very valuable for our communities, specifically now that we're trying to ensure an 100% count in the census. Again, my name is Alma Naya. I'm the commissioner of the 7th Cook County District. It happens to be the most Latinx district in the whole county, and also the most immigrant district. But it also happens to be one of the areas where we have the highest amount of COVID cases, and it increases. Although Illinois as a whole, we're seeing a decrease, we're seeing that in my district, we continue to see a high increase of COVID cases. This means that our families, our community, is not thinking about a questionnaire. They're thinking about essential things like food, housing, and healthcare at this moment. But we're here to urge everyone, we're here to urge community members to take the 5 minutes, to take 10 minutes out of their day to fill out the census. The census will ensure, like the president just mentioned, resources for the next 10 years and representation. We're seeing now in a time of a pandemic the importance of healthcare, the importance of our education system to have all of the resources for our community. And that's exactly why we want to make sure that everybody is counted. Again, it counts for the next 10 years. These are resources that we must receive, representation that we must have. It is estimated that each person not counted is anywhere between $14,000 to $18,000 that the state loses. So we urge everyone to take those 5-10 minutes to filling out the census and ensuring that their community is counted and that they participate in this very important civic duty that we all have, one of the 2 very important civic duties that we have in 2020. So again, as a vice chair of the Cook County Complete Census Commission, we're asking you all to take those 5-10 minutes. I'm going to briefly do this in Spanish. Hola, buenos días. Me llamo Alma Naya. Soy la comisionada del 7º distrito. Es el distrito más latino del condado y el más inmigrante. Estamos aquí porque hemos visto que ahorita mi distrito ha tenido uno de los porcentajes más bajos de las personas que están llenando el censo. Y también estamos viendo que también ha impactado el COVID o la pandemia a este distrito extremadamente. Nuestras comunidades en este momento están pensando dónde van a recibir comida, dónde van a tener los recursos necesarios para educación o quizás para ir a los hospitales y clínicas. Entonces, no estamos pensando en un cuestionario. Pero desafortunadamente este cuestionario va a determinar los recursos y la representación de nuestra comunidad, de nuestra ciudad y nuestro estado por los próximos 10 años. Por eso estamos aquí, porque es sumamente importante. Sabemos que el cuestionario no hace la pregunta de ciudadanía, es seguro, es confidencial y es sumamente importante. Les urjo y les pido que llenen el censo, que tomen esos 5 o 10 minutos de su día para poder llenar el censo y hacerse contar. Y es una de las 2 más importantes cosas cívicas que tenemos que hacer en el 2020. Hemos visto que la pandemia nos ha impactado extremadamente y es tiempo que hagamos esa acta de presencia para nuestra comunidad. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Naya. And I'd like to welcome Marilyn Sanders, again, the Regional Director at the U.S. Department of Commerce Census Bureau.
Good morning, and thank you, President, for the invitation to join you today. As the Chicago Regional Director, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about where we are and what's ahead with the 2020 census. Let me begin by thanking all of you for your commitment and your hard work toward ensuring a complete and accurate count for Cook County, and for providing a platform to engage, educate, and motivate to encourage the community on the importance of the census. $675 billion annually is distributed each year of federal funding based on census numbers. While the Census Bureau has been met with unprecedented challenges for this decennial, we are confident that with your help, we will succeed in counting everyone once, only once, and in the right place. And we now have until October 31st to get an accurate count. We recognize that responding to the census may be difficult for some. So we want to help encourage those who have not responded that the Bureau will be mailing a reminder card that is scheduled to arrive between July 23rd and July 28th. This will be a few weeks before we have census takers that will begin to visit those non-responding households. This is primarily for households who do not respond. Census workers will be hired locally. They've been trained in COVID-19, and they will be provided a atmosphere in which they can go safely in order to collect the data for those non-responding households. Safety is most important for us, and we're following all of the federal, local, and health guidelines to ensure that not only our employees are safe, but the public is safe as well. As President mentioned, throughout our nation, we are and have received responses for over 61.8% of the households. And in Cook County, we are at 61.3%, moving fast and furious forward to get to a 100% count for Cook County. Let's take a minute to highlight some specific demographics we know have been historically in areas that have been undercounted. What we call hard-to-count populations are those that may be hard to persuade, may be fearful of the data, may not trust the government. And that is why trusted voices are needed to help us message the importance for the next 10 years of this data that we collect. The Census Bureau will never ask you information about your finances or Social Security. We ask specifically questions related to demographics, such as your name, your address, the number of people living in your home, your sex, and your race, just to name a few of the questions. Here in Cook County and Chicago, we are focused on accurately counting the population. We have areas such as Austin, North Lawndale, West Garfield Park, New City, West Inglewood, and South Chicago, to just name a few areas where we are in need of encouraging and engaging the community. You as a resident can help. You can ask your friends and family, have you taken the census? And yes, even in this environment, the census can be done safely from your home. You can respond online, by phone, or by mail. So if you've received the questionnaire and have not mailed it back, take 10 minutes and mail back the questionnaire. Hundreds of billions of dollars in federal, state, and local funds are spent in our communities each year. You can be counted. It's important. Everyone counts. The funding to your community for roads, for libraries, for senior citizens facilities, for Pell Grants, this funding from the data that's collected for the 2020 census will help in the distributing of those funds. Take 10 minutes. Be counted. The future of our children and generations that are to come will be based on the data that we collect in 2020. I invite you to be counted, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And now we'll hear from Christina Vera from the William Everett Group.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Christina Vera, here today on behalf of the William Everett Group, the county's Census Program Administrator. I'm here also today as a community advocate for a more equitable future for all of the residents of Cook County. As you've heard from the previous speakers, we can't stress enough how important it is for everyone in Cook County to complete the 2020 census, especially during a pandemic when the very resources we need today are impacted by a complete count. I'd like to thank President Preckwinkle for her leadership and commitment to the people of Cook County, working to ensure all communities have equitable resources through efforts like census awareness. Also, thank you to Commissioner Anaya and all the Cook County Commissioners for their leadership and support of the outreach efforts, particularly in those communities that have been historically undercounted. As you know, the census impacts the future of our communities. It impacts our political representation. It impacts our access to resources, federal funding, local funding, and new business development in our communities. So there's a lot at stake here. But for the communities that are already struggling, low-income communities, immigrant communities, and minority populations, there's a lot more at stake. Due to COVID-19 and the stay-at-home order, we've been challenged to be innovative with our community outreach efforts. Traditional outreach methods just weren't cutting it right now. We had to get creative. We were inspired by the resilience and ingenuity of our fellow Cook County residents to think of new ideas and out-of-the-box concepts to spread census awareness to the Cook County families. We've adapted to the world of social distancing in stride. We've pivoted our strategy from community events to a strengthened approach on social media, targeted digital efforts. We have mobilized digital outreach, virtually implementing a coordinated social media activation where stakeholders, grantees, commissioners, and census champions all post together using the same image, theme, and hashtags. We also updated our outreach strategy, connecting with food pantries, PPE distribution sites, churches, grocery stores, and other locations where people continue to frequent for essentials during the pandemic. We tapped into local leaders. We call them census champions. These are trusted voices in the community, leaders who already have a specific relationship with these groups. They are pastors, counselors, immigration advocates, teachers, early learning providers. This network of trusted voices are beacons in their community. They already have a platform and the community that they impact with their daily work. We tapped into this network of trusted voices and enlisted them as volunteer champions. We send them weekly action items that they can take, simple things that they can do once a week to keep the census message top of mind and amplify the importance of a complete count within their spheres of influence. We also want to take this time to acknowledge the Cook County grantees, the census grantees, who have had to help bring our outreach efforts to the people. The grantees consist of local nonprofits, cultural institutions, neighborhood organizations, townships, and places of worship. Their existing connections within the traditionally undercounted communities they served allowed grantees to reinforce the census messaging in a more personal way. Some examples of outreach efforts include robocalls, PPE distribution events, yard signing, canvassing neighborhoods with door hangers, texting, TikTok challenges, distribution of flyers at places of worship, and inserting census messages on grab-and-go food boxes. Grantees have really stepped up to the challenge to share the message in new, innovative ways, and we support them every step of the way. We acknowledge the great work the grantees are doing. I thank you for all you continue to do on behalf of Cook County's communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Last but not least, our Chief Data Officer, Desa Jablow.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Desa Jablow, and I'm the Chief Data Officer for Cook County. Transparency has been a core tenet of President Preckwinkle's administration from the beginning and is a major part of the policy roadmap, 5-year strategic plan for offices under the President. The Bureau of Technology helps to uphold the President's transparency standards through the Open Data program. This provides the public with a view of the work being done here at Cook County. Our Open Data portal has data going back to 2011, including data sets from around the county, like the historic release of the state's attorney case-level data, the medical examiner case archive, and the Cook County Assessor's modeling and assessment data. We are thrilled to collaborate with the Bureau of Economic Development to create the county's Census by the Numbers dashboard. While the Bureau of Technology maintains the platform and the dashboard, the data itself comes from the 2020 census grantees. As you can see on our display boards, The dashboard has reports that outline budget spending on 4 main categories and provide a deeper dive into subcategories for a more granular understanding of outreach activities over time. The site is currently available in both English and Spanish, and we will continue to update the portal on a rolling basis. It can be found at the data catalog, which is datacatalog.cookcountyil.gov. One more time, that's datacatalog.cookcountyil.gov. Our goal here is to provide you with a straightforward overview of grantee spending. Transparency is not just releasing dashboards. It's making the underlying data accessible, which is why the data set powering the dashboard is also available on our open data catalog. The public should know how the money is being spent to increase census awareness and understand what we are doing to increase response rates. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the data analytics team for their work on designing and creating the dashboard, and the Bureau of Economic Development and William Everett teams for continuing to execute this effort. And of course, the Cook County Census Commission and President Preckwinkle for their continued leadership in support of our work. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Desa. And do we have any questions?
This is Craig Dellamore at BBM.
Yes, Craig.
And good morning.
Good morning.
I know, we've heard a lot about how the efforts to gather a response involve social media, involve more people hitting the streets, different people hitting the streets. But what evidence is there from any of this that it's working?
All right, I think I'll ask Christina. You want to respond? Marilyn, would you like to respond as well? So the question is, what evidence do we have that the outreach work that we're doing is making a difference? We'll start with Christina and then Marilyn. Go ahead.
So on the our analytics, we are able to see the number of click-through rates. So we're able to see the percentage of people actually clicking through our mobile and our digital efforts, clicking through directly to the census website. We cannot, however, determine if they actually completed the census, but what we're doing on our end is really monitoring those low response tracks, those low response communities, and focusing our efforts, honing in on those communities, and we're seeing a slow rise, so we continue to hone in on those communities, and that's the best evidence we have is that low response map.
Marilyn, would you like to say a few words as well?
I would just like to add that with our partnership staff that we have deployed over the time that the Bureau was planning the census, there was a lot of research done in order to inform where low responses would be coming in from. And so we have put work into those specific areas. And so we have several tools that we use. One of them is a regional map that we use that we tracked historically what the response rates were, and then we identified what the projections would be. And now we're looking at the actual responses coming in based on where we put boots on the ground and where we had events prior to the mail out in mid-March. So there's a lot of activity that have gone in, but of course historically we know that there are pockets that are undercounted because of fear, because of not trusting the government. And so as we look at those trends, we can identify where to put the resources. And again, we are seeing some impact on that, though not as much as we would like to see. Thanks.
This is Commissioner, and I think the last thing I would add to that is that, yes, the data is very important, and we're seeing a steady increase in a lot of the areas of anywhere between 5 to 7%. But the important thing that the Commission is doing, that the William Everett Group and some of the grantees are doing, is that they continue to shift. So if something is just not working in any of the low response rates, we're trying to figure out how to shift the outreach efforts so that it becomes more impactful. Each community is very different. Each neighborhood is very different. So the importance is to continue to keep track of those and to continue to shift the approach and the type of outreach. We've done things like caravans, and the days that we see caravans, we see a huge increase in percentage of the individuals in that neighborhood filling out the census. So again, it varies depending on the neighborhood. We're keeping a closer eye on those shifts and that data.
Thank you. Other questions, Craig?
One other, President Preckwinkle, I know the county committed, millions to this. Because of all the changes, the pivoting that had to go on there, is that money enough?
Well, the truth is hard to say. The question is the money enough? We're going to do the best we have with the resources we have, and frankly, as you may have heard last week, we're looking at a situation where we have a $280 million gap to close before the end of November for fiscal year 2020, and we're looking at a $409 million gap for next year for fiscal year 21. So the short story is we don't have any resources other than the ones we've already devoted to this, and we're going to try to do the best we can to use that money effectively. Bureau Chief, would you like to say a few words?
Hello, Sochi Flores, Bureau of Economic Development. I will add that we are working very closely with the William Everett Group, and this data portal is really helping us to assess how the funding is being utilized. We realize that because of the shift in strategies, the grantees were changing their efforts, and the activities that they were focused on were not as costly as we had originally anticipated. So fortunately, they are able to continue their work for a longer period than we had originally anticipated. But this data portal will help us to ensure that we're carefully working with them and deploying the resources in an effective manner.